Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Apocalypse Duds. Today we welcome a special guest, longtime observer and participant in the trad fad, well traveled, well heeled. At least one of his 300 ties has a shield. At your flip flops, he'll reel. The Madras mouth muckraker and appraiser in a navy blazer. We welcome the godfather of the clothing blogger, John Tinseth.
Dear
Welcome.
God, dear
Yeah, dear
God.
God, indeed.
That's the reaction that we want.
Oh,
Either
you bastard. I will say this. I shortly after starting the Trad blog, I really regretted naming it the Trad.
Mhm.
And I'll also say this as well. In the years I worked on that thing, it took a lot of energy.
Yeah,
And
tell us about it. Yeah.
and I also realized that it takes no energy to be myself. And I wish I wish I had done a blog just as
Hmm.
myself.
I mean, I kind of feel like like you describing yourself the way that you did when we first started setting this up. Like it kind of comes through. Like you're one of the only people that I can think of that like never really tried to put anything on, even though maybe you did.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I certainly wasn't me, but I think that's appropriate to army brats or to military brats and foreign service brats. Anybody that moves around a lot, sometimes they don't know who they are. People who don't have a home, and
Well, and
I don't
two,
have a home.
I think that everyone on the internet more or less has to choose how they want to represent themselves.
Absolutely.
You know.
Absolutely. I started that blog because I was back and forth between St. Augustine, Florida, and New York City. And
Yikes.
and what was happening was I would go to Jacksonville, Florida, and Northeast Florida is like Southeast Georgia. There's really no difference. And then bam, I'm in Manhattan. I'm in Midtown, taking a cab to an apartment on East 57th Street. And all I wanted to do was take photographs of those two places, of people dressed in those two places, what the people wore in Jacksonville and what the people wore in Manhattan. And I realized that if I did this in Jacksonville, taking pictures of people in Jacksonville, I would probably get my ass kicked pretty quickly. I know, but there was that guy that had the blog, one of the first street blogs, um, and it was very successful. But I realized, he was taking pictures of people on the street all the time, and I just realized I can't do this in Jacksonville. But it was really easy to do in New York. It really was.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that has something because I think of like taking pictures of people in Baltimore who I see all the time, and I'm like, man, I wish I could take a picture of this person, but it's like I don't know what is going to happen. I have no
Yeah,
idea what is going to happen, so I
yeah,
just take pictures of buildings.
man. You got to have a big pair in some places to do that, and uh,
And
I
my pair is
don't.
modest.
Yeah, I same with me. Yeah, minuscule. I just I don't have I don't have the guts to do that. I'll jump out of planes. I did rock climbing. I had a heart attack. I loved all that stuff.
Do
I thought a
you
heart attack was the best thing that ever happened to me. If you can come out on the other side, it is great. It is an experience and a half. But asking somebody to take their picture, and not in Manhattan, I can't do that. Can't do it. But in Manhattan, they're all like, "Oh yeah, yeah. What's the name of your blog? Oh yeah, yeah."
Right,
Um,
right, yeah. There's
Mordecai, I don't. Mordecai has balls so big, I don't know how he walks. How he does that? He just, I just keep looking at these things of him taking pictures, and I'm like, oh, he's going to get his ass kicked here. I mean, he's definitely going to get in trouble. But so far, I don't know. Must be Must be that nice face of his.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know
right.
that anyone would mess with him really. I think that he gives off what I have sort of figured for myself is that people, I guess, think that I'm unstable, which they're not wrong. And so with Mort, it's kind of a similar thing. You don't know what's going to happen.
Right. Or,
You
or
know,
he's or he gives off a decent innocence.
right,
You know,
right.
and I always, when I first met him, that's, he was stoned,
Of
but he,
course,
he he was stoned almost all the time. But anyway,
We
I
support that.
he, but I mean, I think that there was, this just kind of real innocence about him as a kid. We're talking 12, 13 years ago when I first met him.
there's
I
a
think it was
picture of you guys on very early in your blog. I'm trying to find it. We'll post it at some point, but I thought that was funny. That was like not somebody who I really expected you to be running with. Like at the time, right? I was a college freshman, so I was following these people in New
no,
York, these blogs in New York, and they, I guess, had their own sort of imagined alliances in my mind.
yeah. Yeah, we connected. We certainly connected, and I liked him a lot at the time. He was really, I thought, quite brave,
Oh yeah,
uh, and
beauty in the everyday
so,
uniform is like a mantra. I feel like is genius work, really.
there was another blogger who told me one time, when I was telling him about Mordecai, that I just met him. And I guess that was when he was working for Dockers or some. I think he was working for Dockers back then. And this blogger said, he's like, look, man, I'll call Mordecai, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I won't hear from him for 2 weeks, and then suddenly at 3 o'clock in the morning, I get a text from him, and he's like, just beware of that. Beware. Don't. He doesn't reply very quickly, but he's got a good heart.
Hell yes. He's
And
always he's always come off that way to me.
yeah,
Like I
yeah,
don't know him. I might have met him once or twice when I lived in New York, but uh, yeah, just like seems like a fucking just genuine dude.
yeah. Nothing disingenuous about him at all. Nothing.
Hell yeah. So, John, you've already thrown out Army Brat. So we know you moved around a lot. Can you give us the highs, lows, and in betweens of where you laid your head?
Oh my gosh, that would be. Well, I was born in Ellsworth Air Force Base, South Dakota, just outside of Rapid City. I don't know anything about it. Can you guys hear in the background a chainsaw?
It's my air conditioner. We
No,
will.
no. There's a guy with a
Oh
chainsaw
no,
out my
no,
window.
no.
Yeah, no, I don't hear anything.
Okay, good, 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 good. I was going to go into the bathroom in the toilet and close the door.
No, not necessary.
Yeah, you're good.
Please.
Sorry about that. It is Macon. Um, so, oh, and I just let everybody know I live in Macon. Oh dear God, I'm so embarrassed. So, the I don't remember. I know that we had lived in Fort Sam Houston and Fort Bliss prior to my memory. But when I was about 6, that was when I first remembered um, where we lived and my first memories, and that was El Paso, Texas. The next year was Lawton, Oklahoma, at Fort Sill. The next year was Fayetteville, North Carolina, at Fort Bragg. The next year, Dad went to Vietnam. They kicked us off of Fort Bragg, and we lived in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And so I was in 4th grade. First time I went to a Catholic school. Um, that was fun. Yeah, the
Do you
nuns
think
had.
that had some influence on your dress? I mean, I assume that it was a uniform
Yeah,
school.
it is a. There's a weird thing about some military kids. When you grow up in the military, as my father told me one time, you anything you do is a reflection on me.
Right.
And if you screw up, I will leave you behind.
Wow.
Now, I was about 12 then, and, this was 69, 70. Pot was everywhere, drugs were everywhere, kids were getting in trouble. I knew kids were involved in the black market in Germany. And, I don't think he believed that, but, he wanted to scare the bejesus out of me, and he did.
Yeah.
So it is about image in the military. But I was a clothes horse at a young age. I was wearing. I have a picture of
We want it.
me in a Nehru jacket,
Wow.
with a navy Nehru jacket with a white turtleneck, wearing tie dyed pants and side buckle shoes.
Holy shit.
It's
Because
you know,
you said on your blog that it's about basically looking nice, but also being loud, which I really appreciated.
That's Connor's mentality.
Yeah.
it's the loud thing is I think there's a hidden language in clothing, and this is not my creation.
Sure.
I've heard this many times, and you communicate to other people through your clothing. I can wear a 1010 and snowy sweater from the Milieu Belgian animated series Tintin,
Hmm.
and before the movie came out, nobody knew what the hell it was, and I didn't know what it was when I first started working in London. But because of my last name, everybody called me Tintin in London. So that's that, and I started looking at it, and I thought, and in fact, when I bought a dog, I bought a wire fox terrier because of Tintin. I wanted a dog just like Tintin's. So I remember one time being in a train station with a Tintin sweater on, this huge thing, Icelandic wild thing with Tintin and Snowy on it, their faces.
Oh my God.
And
It was
and a woman walked over
really,
to me. A woman walked over to me, and I'm like, "What the hell is going?" And she's like, "Tintin," and I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah."
that's
So
funny.
to me, it was
So
always
the time Tintin is internationally recognizable.
there was a movie in the States that came out, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, so it's a little better than it was, you know, with the internet. I mean, God Almighty, man, back in the mid '90s, no, nobody knew what
No,
Tintin
no.
was.
Yeah. I remember knowing of it sort of as like a vaguely espionage
Yeah,
English thing, and so in that way, it was attractive to me as like a 9 year old.
yeah, I thought it was French, but I've always was always corrected by French people. No, it's Belgian. That was the
Yeah, they
original,
would correct you.
the artist. And man, I remember one time in London seeing a guy who had a little Citroen, the two
Hmm.
CV, I believe, and it was in tan or khaki, and on the back, just under the rear window, he had a painting of Tintin and Snowy, just like my sweater, but a line painting. And I
Wow.
was like, man, this is this is the coolest thing. I hate to
It
use
was
the word
kind of
cool.
like James Bond neighborhood. I
Yeah,
always thought.
he was a teenage detective,
Right.
solving crimes, and he had his friends and allies.
Because
Um,
isn't Poirot Belgian?
Pardon?
Hercule Poirot is Belgian, I believe.
I thought he was French.
I
Who
thought that there's always a distinction, though. He's like,
Well,
oh no,
they
I'm
went
Belgian.
for like about 300 years ago. They were going back and forth. They didn't even know. It was the Spain and the French and the Belgians and the Swiss. It was all mixed up.
Yeah.
But
Goes to
anyway,
show
I
you sort of the artifice of boundaries in that way.
yeah. That which makes me think of in those countries, Spain had the Order of the Golden Fleece. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, it was he traveled the world. That was another thing. And look, man, I'm 32 years old when I get turned on to to 1010, and I just remember just being fascinated by it. I bought a bunch of the books. and really enjoyed it. I really look, man. That's what I did as a kid in a lot of ways when I moved around a lot. You know, what you wore in Hampton, Virginia at Fort Monroe did not work in Colorado Springs at Fort Carson. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah.
And my sister, who was an artist, she just walked around in overalls, with paint all over them.
It's a
She never
look.
changed. She never changed. She never changed. All the
Hell
places we
yeah.
moved, she never changed. But I always had to get a whole new wardrobe because, so Hampton was topsiders and shorts and sailing on little 12-foot sailboats in the Chesapeake off the coast of Fort Monroe. Colorado Springs was waffle stompers, jeans, a kind of a John Denver look at the time, in '73.
Right.
It was, or you were a cowboy, which the people in my high school called prairie fairy, or goat roper. Then there were the kids who were the potheads, the stoners. Then there were the kids who smoked outside. It was, but I kind of picked up on I kind of, it would be dishonest of me to say I didn't like John Denver, because I did, but I was young then.
Yeah, you didn't like him like that.
Yeah.
Like
My
my
mom-
mom likes John Denver still.
My mom has a great John Denver story, but
Yeah,
I will. Yeah, she.
You can't
Tell
say
it.
it and not say it.
I don't even know. Maybe this hasn't come up, but he was her favorite songwriter when she was in high school, and I'm pretty sure with our math, you're in my parents' general age range.
Okay.
You know, went to high school in the early to mid '70s, etc. So he was her favorite songwriter. She wrote him a letter inviting him to her graduation, and I don't think, sadly, I don't think she still has it. But he sent her an autographed photo and a handwritten letter back saying that if he had not had a tour scheduled, he would have been at her graduation.
Wow.
Yeah, I have a
nice
soft
guy.
spot for him. Also, the Toots and the Maytals "Country Road" cover is one of my favorite reggae songs. So
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, you're right. I mean, he was a great songwriter. And,
yeah. I can't say that I personally enjoy a lot of it, but
Yeah, I
don't even know what John Denver sounds like. It's like, what is a John Denver song? What's the most famous John Denver song? We don't even know.
Rocky Mountain High.
Yeah, Rocky Mountain High is up there. Take Me Home, Country Roads.
Oh, so I do know that. That's
and he wrote stuff for Peter, Paul, and Mary. They did some of his stuff when he was still just a songwriter.
Yeah.
He was one of those.
Yeah, but he was
no DJ Khaled character.
Yeah, but he was. I mean, he just needed a little roughness or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Agreed.
He was too flat.
Yeah.
Our sister in Garms, Eva Kuehl, founded her brand Epaulet in 2008 and has remained dedicated to making quality garments in the USA at a fair price ever since. Known for her discerning taste in fabric, she searches endlessly to offer things not seen anywhere else, culminating in a fantastic assortment from casual to formal. Eva sources some of the most amazing fabrics available and offers them in an inclusive size range from 34 to 48. You can message her for personal help in finding your size too. If you're looking for a go-to clothing resource, visit epaulettebrand.com and enter the code DUDCAST10 for 10% off your order.
Were you shopping at the PX at this point, or
Yeah.
I went to them as a child with my aunt, whose ex-husband was in the Air Force, and as a kid that collected baseball cards, it was revolutionary.
Okay, let me educate you here very quickly. So
yes, please.
If you ever run into another brat, they'll know that you're hip. And on an Air Force base, it's not a PX, it's a BX.
Okay, gotcha.
Because an Air Force base is a base.
Base
exchange. Do not call an Army post a base.
We were
on base.
We went to McClellan, so
Yeah.
it was a PX, not a. Yeah.
Fort McClellan, yes. Okay, that was a post. But most people will say, the Army base, And that's why it's a post. It's a post. It's an Army post. I would always say we're on post. We live on post.
We love this kind of like specificity, like language, kind of
Oh, it's
strangulation.
wonderful. It's
Yeah,
wonderful.
it's
Well,
it's really good.
yeah, and it's it's a woman wrote a book about military brats back in the '90s, and she said we were the largest invisible minority. And
That's interesting,
I
but that's a
always,
good point.
it is, it is. We all have the same problems. We have a lot of mental issues, and this depends too on what your father did. Now,
Sure.
there were fathers. There, I know military brats whose dads were judge advocate, which meant they were lawyers. They were doctors, working in the post hospital. They didn't have the life I did. They usually stayed someplace maybe 5 years, maybe 6 years. And my dad was a Green Beret, and he was a captain of an A team in Vietnam, and that is very different coming home. I've written this before. You don't spend your life either learning how to kill people, killing people, or teaching other people how to kill people, and or a good parent. It's real hard to do.
Yeah.
So some brats have that issue, and I've befriended some since the trad. And there was another blog I wrote while I was writing the trad called "I'm Here to Leave," and that was my Army brat blog. Not many people read it, but it attracted some brats, and I wound up talking on the phone with a lot of people who had fairly violent fathers, and we also all realized one thing about our fathers is that as they got older, they had great regret to a man. Every one of them, my dad was very stoic. He didn't talk much, very quiet. Um, and I followed him in to Special Forces. 9 years after he got back from Vietnam, I enlisted in the Army and went into 7th Special Forces Group. And everybody there, all the cadre, they all knew my dad because they had all been in Vietnam. And Special Forces was a small little world. And it's still, there are issues that go with that, but at the same time too, I was 16 years old. My dad didn't. When Dad got back from Vietnam, we did not get along. But when
I
I
can
was
imagine.
16, I told him I wanted to go jump out of a plane, and that was the minimum age to go skydiving. So we were. He was actually at NORAD. He was the public affairs officer there, but we went to Fort Carson, and they had a sport jump club. And, he was with me every night during my training, my 5 nights of training to jump out of a plane, doing parachute landing falls. He was with me. And on the day of the jump, he was running around taking pictures. He was a big camera nut. And we go back to the clubhouse, and everybody's there. And you had to buy the club a case of beer for your first jump. And Gordy, the president of the club, came over to me and he said, "John, if you're old enough to jump out of a plane, you're old enough to drink beer." So I sat on a parachute packing table with my dad, smoking cigarettes and drinking beer.
Wow. Wow.
And we watched a movie called The Gypsy Moths with Burt Lancaster. Oh man, who else?
We can find out. We have the technology.
The Gypsy Moths is just a beautiful movie about skydiving. I was just, and suddenly, we were suddenly pals. We're telling each other jokes. Like, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you enjoy the play? That was my first joke I ever told my dad, and he was like, he was
Gene
dying laughing.
Gene
So
Hackman is in it.
Gene Hackman, right?
Deborah Kerr.
Deborah Kerr.
These people, yeah.
It was, I guess they had a 16 millimeter printer of it. And so, yeah, I mean, and here I am with all these guys. I mean, I had, this kind of started, I was thinking, this really started my attraction to being with older people.
Right.
I didn't want to be with people my age, and I sure as shit didn't want to be with anybody younger than me. I wanted to be, and that's Charlie Davidson.
Yeah.
That's Steven Salen. That's Avery Lucas. That's these guys that have taught me so much.
Mm-hmm.
And really the blog, I earned no money from that blog, but it gave me access to all of these people and to the back rooms of Paul
Yeah.
Stewart and Brooks
Yeah.
Brothers and to see really what was going on and how it was going on.
I
Um,
I don't remember what year it was from. I think it was you reposted it when Charlie passed. But
mm-hmm.
Julie Hurling was what I would call a friend and a mentor for me. And
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow. Lucky you.
yeah. He helped me get my job at Epaulet when I moved to New York. He's has been also the same for my friend Matt Lambert that does Factors Collection now. But like he was a special motherfucker.
He
And
was.
yeah, like when I don't remember what the conversation totally was, but you'd posted something about you guys like talking about Charlie, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was really special to read that again. Like
He said Charlie was a bullshitter.
yeah, exactly. Like Mr. Hurling was one of a million, man.
Yeah. And
Uh,
he said, don't get me wrong. He was taking me home because he was driving me back to my apartment because I got on the subway to see him in Brooklyn. He goes, I'll take you home. And we're in the car and he said, yeah, he said, yeah, I've known Charlie since 1946. He said,
right, right,
but he said, don't get me wrong, Charlie's a bullshitter. He said, but all retailers are bullshitters.
right, right.
Part of the
And
business.
yeah, it's the business.
That's just how he was. Did you?
Julie I was really blown away by him.
Yeah, same
One of
here.
the, he was in the same building as Jay McLaughlin in Brooklyn.
Yeah,
And,
I went
and
there
one of,
about once a week.
I would remember one of the McLaughlin brothers, I can't remember which one, came down and I was talking to Julie and Julie said something to him about, we're talking about, he's got a, what do you call that? A blog? Yeah, blog. And we're talking about a blog and you understand any of this stuff? And the one McLaughlin brother said, yeah, Julie, I understand it. And that's when Jay McLaughlin invited me up there,
Oh, that's awesome.
and I got to see his place, and I interviewed the two brothers, and I had this huge piece ready to go, and they sold, and I never ran it. I never
Wow.
ran it.
Yeah.
I
I
was
wonder.
really
Go
kind of
on.
a look, man, everything changes, and I have to understand. I'm an old man now. I'm 66 years old, and I have to understand that but everything's changing. Brooks Brothers isn't what it used to be. Neither is Jay McLaughlin.
Absolutely.
Neither is the Andover Shop. When people are lost like that, and same thing with Julie. It just everything changes, and sometimes not for the better. But yeah, I'm glad. I'm so glad. I'm so fortunate that I just really got to experience it. I got to experience. This to me was like meeting, an actor or a writer
Yeah,
of
Keith
great. And in fact,
Richards.
the blog got me. I met Gay Talese,
Yeah, which
writing that blog.
that is insane.
I
That is
mean,
crazy.
well, he's a clothes horse,
Yeah, no, I
Um,
know. I mean, I just think that's like, I don't know.
the
That's like
English,
a guy, right? That's like Gore Vidal.
yeah, the English have a word for it called a clothes mad, and people who are mad about clothing. And I told that to Gay, and he's like, that's good. I never heard that. So yeah, I mean, I really consider my roommate in college went on to become a very famous screenwriter and film producer. Young Guns 1 and 2, The Babe, Thunderheart,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and in fact he told me that he based the Val Kilmer character on me in Thunderheart. Because and actually, another friend of ours had seen Thunderheart before I ever heard this from John. He called me up and he's like, "Have you seen Thunderheart yet?" I said, "No," and he goes, "Fusco nailed you." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "What are you talking about?" Because you, Val Kilmer is playing you. Because I always did want to be an FBI agent, but that was, that was like, to me, the clothing business. Man, that was Hollywood to me. It might as well just have been Hollywood, and I was in the right place for it. I was in the center of the universe for it.
I wanted to ask about that. So you said your dad was a camera guy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um,
Dark room.
so
I had a dark room. He built a dark room when I was about 13, 14.
wow, yeah. I mean, I know people used to have them in their houses, which is
Yeah,
like amazing.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask. So if you go back, way back to your early blogging, basically, there are these pictures that it's like they were before their time. There's like a selfie in an air like in an airplane bathroom,
Yeah, yeah.
like in like this, just really ahead of the curve with a lot of the stuff, especially with the blog and with the documentary photography. I just think really, I don't know, kind of cutting edge. So I wonder how you feel about it in retrospect.
I don't know about cutting edge.
Well, it was. It was. You were
I'll
doing that kind of stuff before many, many, many other people.
I didn't know that, but but
Huh.
but all I was trying to do was document something, and so that I think that photograph in the plane. Funny, I remember this. Was me flying from Jacksonville to New York,
Wow.
to Newark, New Jersey, and getting a cab. And I took photos in the cab,
Right. All
passing
that
a
kind of
city
stuff.
bus. It was just me going to 235 East 57th Street,
Well, it's like what
and
the internet used to be. It used to be like that. It used to be about here I am eating a bagel again,
right, right,
and
right,
we're not there anymore.
right. So I think maybe in some ways I have, going back to 1960. I just have tons and tons and tons of photographs of hard
Yeah,
copy,
that's
still black and
amazing.
white, Polaroids, color Polaroids, and to me, I'll tell you a secret that I never told anybody about the blog.
Here we
I
are.
couldn't write a goddamn thing unless I had a picture in front of me. But when I saw the picture, it got me going. I could suddenly write a story,
Huh.
and that, that I don't, and I'm still like that.
Because I can never fucking write anything, so it's like maybe I need a picture.
Look, I mean, a picture is a lot of inspiration, and
Yeah,
you're not stealing. It's just,
it's your own generated
yeah. And
whatever.
clothing is about memory to me. I have memories, like I told you, of the Nehru jacket,
Right.
um,
You're
and
speaking our language right now. I mean,
you know,
this is
and
exactly us. I'm like rolling up
and
my sleeves.
well, it's like it's just, they are to me something, um, that, so, I saw something somewhere. A woman said, a friend told her that she should get rid of her clothes because she was getting a divorce, clothes that she had with her husband. And I remember thinking, oh, don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah,
You want to
why?
you want to
Why?
keep those. You want
Yeah.
to keep those, and you're going to regret it if you throw them away 10, 20 years from now. You're going to regret that, because I got underwear older than you guys. I've got, I won't let go. And this is another part of being a military brat. I don't let go of anything.
No.
Now, some military brats let go of everything. The other ones don't let go of anything, and there's not really much room, I have heard from psychiatrists, in between. You either don't let go or you do. And so I'm like that with all kinds of things, clothing and, the things in my head.
It sounds a lot like my students, kind of, many of whom have witnessed insane violence and like parents moving around all the time, moving like 4 times in one school year. So it's, yeah, I mean, I feel you.
Yeah. No, it's what do you teach? What?
Because I teach reading in Baltimore City. I teach reading like in the projects, basically.
Okay.
Kindergarten
I
and
taught
first grade.
I taught English in prison.
Yeah, that's tight. I've thought about doing that. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I taught English to a group of Chinese ladies. There were 6 or 7 of them. Their writing and they knew English better than I did. I was just trying to teach them how to pronounce words. They were having problems with that. But yeah, teaching English in prison. It was a female prison, and the writing that the teaching I did in the Chinese group referred me to this prison, and that was, man, I'll tell you, I remember getting in my car leaving the prison to go home and thinking, I've never felt so good. I've never
Yeah.
felt like like I'm helping somebody, like I'm contributing something, like I'm doing something, as opposed to selling commercial insurance for 22 years.
Yeah.
It was night and day. It was really night and day.
You sleep very easily. At least
Pardon?
I said I sleep very easily. Like,
yeah.
when you're doing work that is good, I don't know. It's like the other stuff. It doesn't matter that as much.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true.
John, how did you get started writing? Like, what are the things that's always struck, I think both me and Connor, about your blog is just like the quality of the writing that you do.
The writing is way better than almost everybody else's.
Seriously.
Not to do it like that.
Not to blow up.
Like
we ain't blowing smoke up your ass, but like, I followed you a long ass time, and I revisited the past couple of days. And I was just like, shit.
I was struck by like the breadth of the writing and the like scope. I don't know. My parents are writers. It's good.
Oh,
you can't say that's amazing.
I gotta talk to you about that. Look, I also have been diagnosed by the VA with PTSD, and I will tell you some of the backstory about that blog and people who complimented me on my writing. One was an editor from Esquire. I remember I was living right behind Esquire at the time. I was on East 56th Street. And I met him at the Starbucks there. And we just met for the first time. And he was telling me what a great writer I was. And at the time, I did not know I had PTSD. And I said to him, really? Well, I mean, have you read much? I mean, I'm no Tom Wolfe, man. And I'm no Thomas Wolfe. What are you talking about? And he looked at me really puzzled. Like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? I don't take compliments well. I never did. I never did.
I feel
and
it's hard.
I also just didn't think my writing, was at the level of, Thomas Wolfe's Look Homeward Angel. I mean, I was just.
I have that on my bookshelf.
Oh, I love that book. I got the first edition.
My mom gave it to me. When I went to rehab, my mom gave it to me.
Oh, man. Oh, it's such a good book.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And an interesting man. I was obsessed with him. He had a relationship with
he's a Southern writer, right?
Yeah, from North Carolina.
Yeah.
And he moved to New York and got involved in an affair with a married Jewish woman, Aline Bernstein, who worked in the theater. She was like in costuming or something. And they had this wild affair. And there was a diary, which, he and they kept letters, and all these letters had been published. The sex those two had was like amazing. The both of them talking about it. And I just thought, wow, this is such a great story. And they went their separate ways, and Wolf died at a very young age.
My
But
mom's gonna be so happy we're talking about him.
but it I always thought it would make a great film. And I somebody did a film about Thomas Wolfe a few years ago. But
Because he was from
it
Asheville,
didn't.
right?
Pardon?
He was from Asheville, right?
I think so. That area, yeah. And
Yeah,
the
because
house is still there. The house is still
that's
there, I
where I was
believe.
down. I went to the house. Yeah,
Yeah, his father was his father carved gravestones, and
yeah, which that's like
that's
that's
the
like a
premise of
Batman
Look
and
Homeward
everything.
Angel, because all those old grave tombstone monuments. But yeah, I was such an I don't know how to take a compliment, and I've had a few women tell me in my life, just say thank you and shut up. But
That's what they say. It's hard,
yeah,
easier said than done.
but yeah, and I that was to me, I've kind of been confrontational with people in a lot of ways who I just didn't think were doing the right thing. It's a real righteous indignation kind of thing. And I've been doing it, really since I got out of the Army. Um, I remember, my first year in college, I went to a little college, Flagler College in St. Augustine, and on the GI Bill and loans and work grant and all kinds of stuff. And I had a teacher there who was doing a business class, and he was talking about how pimps market. And
Hmm.
I was writing it down, um, and I kept writing because I thought he was an idiot, and I kept writing. And he came over to me and he said, "Oh, Mr. Tinseth, am I interrupting you? You seem to be writing quite a bit there." I said, "Well, sir, um, I don't know if you know this, but I'm a veteran and I'm paying my own way through school. My parents aren't paying. I'm paying, and I'm trying to figure out how much it's costing me to listen to you by the minute."
Hey, do you like clothing that's well made? If you're listening to us, we assume you do. Our longtime comrade, Ava Kuehl, is the founder and creative behind a gnarly brand called Epaulet. She offers thoughtfully designed and crafted garments made right here in the USA at a non-bougie price. Epaulet staples like the Doyle work jacket, the more directional Kamigata, and the infamous Rivicino have been captivating her clientele for more than a decade. The commitment to offering unique, interesting fabrics and a staunchly consistent fit is unrivaled. From casual outerwear to made-to-order RTC tailored clothing, Epaulet offers a garment for any occasion. Visit epauletbrand.com and enter the code DUDCAST10 for 10% off your first order.
And he asked to see me outside, and they sent me to the dean. And the dean was an awfully nice man, and he's like, "John, you were in the Army. You know better than that, not to do that to somebody in front of an entire class. Would you do that to somebody in front of an entire platoon?" I said, "Yeah, you know what, Dean Carberry, you're right. You're absolutely right. That I was wrong to do that." But that guy did not come back the next year, and I think I had something to do with it, and I'm quite proud of that.
I
As
was
you
gonna
did,
ask, right? Because it's a collision of like from the military, your like responsibility and like kind of a rigid schedule. You're meeting these people, presumably, who are like college freshmen who don't have any idea even how to eat breakfast, you know?
They didn't know who John Lennon was.
Yeah.
That was when that was my freshman year. People were like, "Who's John Lennon?" Um,
Were the
yeah,
Beatles just like, I don't know.
I guess it's that age group that I was in. They were all, I was born in 57. They were all born in 61, 62. And I think what happened was, the Beatles were gone by 69. And even if they might know the Beatles, I think kids today have better knowledge of the Beatles and John Lennon, than anybody did in 1980. The 18-year-old back then, you had to be a real musical. I think you had to be really into the Beatles, and maybe they were just too young. I don't know. Casey and the Sunshine Band, they all knew who they were.
Right. It's that like generational torch passing, like the Beatles.
Yeah,
I'm a music person. Like I know their impact was like really big, but also like in the time, short lived. And
right.
then yeah, and then like you had all this other shit in the like if these people were born in '61, they would have been coming of age in the like mid '70s. And so
Yeah.
yeah, Casey and the Sunshine Band, like disco was waning. Uh, yeah, there's a lot of like difference in a very small amount of time.
I remember my father had come back from Korea in like 1970. He had been there a year,
He went to
and
Korea and he went to Vietnam.
this was Korea after Vietnam. The Second Infantry Division was there, and he was the public affairs officer, which is why he was a big
Gotcha.
camera guy. He was a
Yeah.
writer. He was publishing newspapers and magazines. Anyway, my mother wouldn't let him drive because he hadn't driven for a year. So he was pretty rusty. And we went to go see the Beatles movie Let It Be. And we get done with it, and we're driving home, and he said, those guys could shit in a paper bag and people would buy it. And and I remember sitting there going, I don't know about Paul, George, or Ringo, but I'd buy John Lennon's shit
Yeah,
for
right.
$5. I mean, and I
Depending on the
think
cost,
to
I guess.
me, they were, especially in my age group, and I was just too young to go to their concerts. I was hearing about people going, but their clothing was just. I mean, you go back and look at the photographs of those
Oh,
guys,
it's so
especially
fucking good.
in the late '60s, and oh my God, they were
Well, they
just
just had
and
access to whatever they wanted, right?
Lennon's like wearing these shirts that look like they come from Turnbull and Asser. They probably did. He's wearing it's a white collared, striped, loudly colored, dress shirt. God, I love those.
Didn't you also
And
see that there's also that like famous picture of him and Yoko, and I think he's wearing like a Type One with maybe like some '40s Wranglers and Chucks. Like
yeah,
these guys pulled
I
it
think
all
Robbie
off.
sent that picture to me. I don't remember. I don't. I because I think the point was the shoes
Yeah,
for
yeah.
him.
The shoes are definitely up there.
well, that period of time too, was just clothing was wild, and it started out right. They started using they were using cotton, and then along came the '70s, and
Right.
unfortunately
Right.
polyester
Yeah,
got involved,
yeah.
And
and
ruined
Fucking
everything.
fuck. We are anti-polyester on this program.
I've got a whole ration of magazines that were published by a man named William Siegel. One was called Gentry. Check it out; it's amazing. And another was called it was about fabric. It was a trade magazine, and he published those two. Pages had swatches, real swatches, glued in onto the page.
That's so sick.
Um,
Yeah, they
and
don't do
and
that anymore.
and man, the it was just so sad when the '60s kind of petered out, and then the early '70s came, and then all this DuPont stuff just really changed things in a lot of
Weird
ways.
how that thing that we always talk about on this program has kind of interfered.
Yeah, yeah. I
Because
remember
it's
like
cheaper, right? I mean, it's cheaper
yeah,
to
it's
produce.
huge cheap.
I mean,
That's the
It's
end
cheap,
of the
it's essentially
discussion.
and it
plastic.
and
It
it
is
doesn't
right.
shrink,
It's plastic,
and
and you can make it
it doesn't
easily.
shrink. You can make that stuff for spit, and you don't have to worry how people wash it. They can wash it in hot water all day long, and it's not going to shrink. I was talking to a friend of mine recently who's in the business, and we were talking about can anybody make a button down Oxford shirt anymore for less than $200? And
Yeah, I wonder.
and he said and that you have to hang to dry, because if you don't hang it, it will shrink. I mean, I was paying $185 for bespoke 10 years ago. And suddenly, and now the choices for button-down shirts are small, medium, and large. You don't even get an alpha size anymore. So it's going to change again. All of this is going to change again.
What do you think? What do you think will happen?
I got an A on a paper one time
Unless you know
that I wrote in high school.
Yeah.
About we had to invent things. And one of the things I invented was moving Pikes Peak to Florida, and then moving the beach sand from Florida to Pikes Peak where it used to be. And the big hole there, you'd finally have fucking water in Colorado somewhere, I could go sailing and things would be great. That was one thing. And the second thing I invented was clothing that was just almost like silicone. And you could control the temperature. You could raise or lower your temperature, so you didn't need coats. You didn't,
in a future where you don't need coats.
No,
we like it. And actually, we're going into a future where we won't need coats. So
and
sorry.
I could go out. I could go outside, and it's 100 degrees, and I'd be nice and cool.
Yeah. Damn it! I was going to ask you something.
I don't know how much time I have because my phone is on 10%.
Oh shit! All right.
I'm not. I beg your forgiveness. I did not prepare well for this.
You were doing a great job. So, I can't remember what I was going to ask you. Unfortunately, I guess we'll have to edit this.
That's okay.
Because we do. Right. Yeah, so here's what I was going to say. Do you want to hear about our invention?
Yeah.
Oh God, damn it, Connor.
So long-standing invention, genius brains combined. Matt Smith, Connor Fowler. We're thinking the bladder daddy. Okay, so the bladder daddy. You're driving. You have to go to the bathroom. You relieve yourself into a bladder daddy, right? And you continue to drive. You can keep it in the little pocket in the door.
Kind of like a reverse Camelback.
Like reverse Camelback. Well, reverse Camelback is even worse. I do like that though.
Yeah,
I'm writing that down. I'm writing that down. That will go into the show copy.
We had something like that in the Army on convoys, where you would pee into a can, and one time driving down from spring break with John Fusco, the screenwriter and the film producer, and a couple of other friends in the back of a Buick Deuce and a Quarter, driven by another good friend. We were all going down to Daytona for spring break. And, I had to pee. And the driver said, hey, I'll pull over. And I said, no. I learned this thing in the Army. We don't have to pull over. And so I peed into my beer can. And I forgot that all the windows were down. So when I threw the can of pee out the window,
oh no!
It kind of hit everybody in the back seat. But they still do talk to me. But that's
just beautiful poetry, really.
They should have something like, why wouldn't they just have something come out from under the steering wheel that you put on and pee and then take off and
And we're really in uncharted territory now on this program.
Yeah.
I was thinking, do you have a thing? I know you do. Something you're mourning, an article of clothing you're mourning that you can't replace, that you won't find again. But let's not be too sad about it, since we're just talking about piss for an hour, right?
Right. I do. I have an article. I still have it, but it's falling apart. When I was a park ranger,
you've done so much stuff.
And yeah, that's basically incompetence. And
that's me. That's what everyone says when they see my resume.
And a woman in St. Augustine was making by hand all of the linen small clothes that were reproductions of 18th century small clothes worn by the Spanish army working at the Castillo de San Marcos in St. Augustine. We wore an 8-pound wool coat over it, but I still have the linen shirt, and many women have tried to take it.
You
And it
can't let
is,
anyone of any gender take your stuff. It's
I
like,
know, but girls are a different story anyway. But this linen was kind of heavy, but it's got holes in it now, and it's hard to wear in public. But it was one of the most comfortable things in the world.
I have that shirt. It has holes in it. I've been wearing it. I
Yeah,
think you could do it too.
yeah, yeah. I wanted to. I was in India for 7 months, and
That was at COVID time, right?
they got the best linen I've ever seen, and I was like, trying to convince the guy down there of making an 18th century shirt.
What
But
is it? I'm sorry. What is it that makes it an 18th century shirt in terms of like
well,
construction?
first off, it's a pullover. It's a V
Okay.
neck with ruffles along the V neck, but in real linen.
Mm-hmm.
The shirt sleeves tie at the cuff. There are no buttons. You have to tie it. And
Do they
it's
kind of
about
flare, or is that
uh,
that's like a Renaissance sleeve?
right, right. Well, they're a little puffy. They're a little
Yeah.
puffy, but not pirate shirt puffy.
Mm-hmm.
It's more, it's kind of clean. But the amazing thing is, I was wearing these things every summer on the gun deck of this old Spanish fort in St. Augustine. It would be 100 degrees. It would be 99% humidity, and you had to wear an 8-pound wool coat over it. But what would happen is when you got into the office, to take a break or have lunch or whatever, you take the wool coat off. The small clothing, the breeches and the shirt were soaking wet, and we just had fans in there, and it was like the air conditioning was on. It was beautiful, and it was the most comfortable stuff I ever wore. I've seen the closest I've ever seen to it is a woman on eBay who sells French work shirts from the early 19th century, and where that's all they are, linen. They're heavy linen, long sleeve, V-neck. That's it. And man, it's just the feeling of it is just amazing. It's just a wonderful, wonderful thing to wear. Um, I love it. I love it. Yeah, that's. But it's from 1980, so it's getting ready to fall
So yours
apart
is,
into little
yeah.
tiny pieces.
I
Yeah.
have it's like an Italian shirt. It's like Fanetti or something. It's like made up, but
Uh-huh.
it has holes all over it, and I'm probably just gonna wear it until I can't wear it anymore.
Yeah. I guess there's a pair of pants that I have that I made with Charlie Davidson. It was fabric that had been left over from a guy who was a very good client of Charlie's, and it was Marimekko fabric, and we did it together, and um, I I I will cherish those. I might put those in my tombs. Oh, I'm not going to be buried, but anyway, I would, if I were to be buried, I would put them in my coffin with me. Um,
Melt them down and put them in the urn, baby. That's what it's all about.
um, yeah, there are some things like that, but they're not so much because of what it was. That linen shirt that was made by a woman, Gudrun Hall. She was German, and she was married to my art professor at Flagler College. She made all of that clothing, and so I know who made it. And she was
Yeah, and that's
we were
amazing.
good friends. We were all very good friends. That was the nice thing about going to college as a 23-year-old freshman was, the faculty were a little bit more, you could drink with them. I mean,
Yeah.
they seemed to. I had been in the Army. I made sergeant before I got out. I was in an airborne unit, and I had a lot of stories.
They
So,
recognize you as an adult,
and I had
instead of
a
like a
Fiat
kid.
X19, which was the biggest piece of crap. A great looking car, but it broke all the time. I think that's why they call it Fixated Tony. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it was a great time to have been there and been with those people, and they stay. Obviously they stay in the forefront of my mind. I can't remember what the hell I had for dinner yesterday, but I know them very well.
Man.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. John, this has been awesome, and we are definitely need to have you back on the second time.
Yeah.
I would be happy to. I would be
cover
happy to.
We'll have the phone charged next time.
Don't drag this out too long, because
No,
any minute I
It's a
may
ticking
cut
time
out.
bomb.
Yeah. So let us hit you with this last question. What is your view of menswear in 2024?
Well, I'm trying to be positive, and it's hard. It's hard, man.
I feel it. You can just let your freak flag fly.
I guess here's my view, that the more world menswear becomes, or any clothing, that it's not so much like I can go to India and make anything. I can make my Nehru jacket in India. With the internet, with communication, with the fabric that's out there, I can order fabric from India a whole lot less than I would pay for it in the States, even with the shipping. The world is open to us, and I would say too that the other thing is that we can go on eBay and buy 18th century silk. I mean, I this crap was hard to find in the 80s and the 90s, if not impossible, but it's everywhere now. And so it's really, I think it's a good, that's my positive side of this, is that the internet and the manufacturing and being able to see, like Tintin and Snowy, being able to see these things in other countries that you never knew about, and you can educate yourself about it in a heartbeat. It's not hard at all. I think that's great. And if you've got a little bit of imagination and like to, tweak things a little bit, man, or to go out and buy a French linen work jacket from 1930. It's $50, and I think it's maybe free shipping.
Yes, absolutely. I think we're all on the same page. Like,
yeah,
overall, as many problems as the internet that arise, like, isn't that positive?
I think the suit's dead too. I got to say that.
We'll see. I guess. Yeah. I
Blazers never. But I just don't know about why anybody would have to go wear a suit to work unless they're in insurance, and even those people don't do it anymore.
Right. We're all just eating popcorn on the sideline, seeing what happens next.
That is very true.
Yeah. Well, dude, thank you once.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Connor.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you on sooner rather than later.
That's very nice of you. Thanks.
We would like to give you a chance to shout out whatever you want to. So
I shouted it out, babe. I think we're good.
We got
thank you.
The trad. You're kind of legendary.
No, please. How many legends have you met? Come on.
I mean,
you're gonna make him turn into a toad, Matt, or something.
All right, cool. Well,
you guys are great. Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right.
Everyone, thank you for listening. I am Matt Smith at Rebels Rogues.
And I'm Connor Fowler at Connor Flower.
We are at Apocalypse Studs on Instagram, apocalypsestuds@gmail.com if you want to send us email. All right, cool. See
Take care,
next week.
gentlemen.
Thanks, man.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.